In today's video, I am sharing 10 things that I wish I knew sooner about coloured pencils. And I really hope that the tips that I share in today's video will help you avoid some of the mistakes that I made as a beginner. So please do make sure that if you enjoy these types of videos, you leave a big thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel because it really helps my channel out. But anyway, let's jump into today's video. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you is to make sure that you have a budget. Coloured pencils can be very expensive, especially if you are purchasing high quality pencils. Every brand varies in price, but I will give you a couple of examples of how expensive coloured pencils can be. For example, a set of 24 Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils cost me around £30, and this works out at around £1.25 per pencil. But if you do think that that is bad, then let's take a look at the Caran Luminance pencils. So a set of 20 of these pencils will actually cost you around £70. And this works out at a whopping £3.65 per pencil. That is a lot of money to be setting aside for pencils, especially when you are a beginner and you've got to think about the fact that you've got a lot of other materials that you need to buy as well. The cost can also vary in different countries, and you may have to factor in other costs such as paying for shipping or also paying for replacement pencils. When I was a beginner, I didn't properly budget for materials, and so I ended up spending a lot of money on materials and products that I ended up not using. And so if I could go back, I would make sure that I had a proper budget, and I budgeted for things like essentials first. I'd also recommend starting off with a small set of good quality pencils. Even a set of 12 pencils is enough to get you started, and don't forget that you can stretch those colours further by creating things like colour mixing tables and swatching colours to create new colours. By starting with a small set of pencils, you can also experiment with which coloured pencils are best for you. And then if you decide that you like a brand, you can then invest more in that brand. At least that way you've invested in a small set rather than throwing a lot of money away on a large set that you may not use. The next thing that I wish I knew sooner about coloured pencils is that not all coloured pencils are the same. There are actually two main types of coloured pencils: wax-based pencils and oil-based coloured pencils. Wax-based pencils contain more wax binder in them, and so they are a softer texture and better for things like portraits or cartoons. Oil-based pencils have more oil binder in them, and so they have a harder lead and are much better for more textured and detailed pieces. You can of course use both wax and oil-based pencils together as well to get the benefits of both pencils. You just need to bear in mind that they do feel very different to each other, and so I would definitely recommend researching the brands of pencils first to decide on which ones may be the best for you. Another thing that I do when I buy new sets of pencils is I do a lot of colour swatching. Colour swatching is where you take each pencil and you create a little swatch of them, and this can help you to see what sort of colours you're going to get, as well as get a feel for the pencils as well. You also need to remember that the colour that is on the casing of a pencil may be very different to the colour that you get on paper, so that is another reason why it's very important to swatch your pencils. As a beginner, I never realised how important your paper is, and in some ways your paper is more important than the pencils. The truth is that no matter how good your coloured pencil techniques are, if your paper isn't right, then your drawing will never look right. And so it's very important to choose the right paper. Make sure that you are using a good quality paper, and preferably opt for paper that is suitable for artists. You definitely don't want to be using any cheap quality paper, especially printer paper. You also want to make sure that you are using the right paper depending on what it is that you are drawing. So let me give you a couple of examples. For example, if you are drawing a portrait of a person often has a lot of smooth complexions such as their skin, and so you want to be using a smooth paper to draw on. And on the other hand, if you are drawing animals, for example, then animals contain a lot of textures and details, and so it's best to use a paper that has a bit more tooth to it. And lastly, if you are using a solvent, then a solvent is a wet medium. And so you want to use paper that is able to handle all those layers of solvent and is suitable for a wet medium, such as watercolour paper. And like with coloured pencils, brands of paper can feel very different to each other as well, and so you might want to experiment with paper first to choose the ones that you prefer. It is very important to choose a good quality reference photo, for example a reference photo with clear details and good lighting. If you are using reference photos that are of quite poor quality, then this can actually reflect in your drawings. And so it's important to use good quality photos. Another thing that you want to do before you start your drawing process is to spend some time analysing the reference photo. I also start making a list of all the coloured pencils that I'm going to use in my drawing, because this helps me to keep track of the pencils that I'm using, especially if I'm going to be taking lots of breaks from the drawing in between. When you start your drawing process, also make sure that you have a reference photo on hand as well, and look back at the photo every 5 to 10 seconds so that you don't start drawing from memory. Creating an accurate sketch is so important because you want to make sure that you have accurate proportions and compositions in your drawing. And the good thing is that there are many ways that you can create an accurate sketch. And in this video, you can see me demonstrating using the grid method to create an accurate sketch of my drawing. The grid method is a great technique for breaking a reference photo down and focusing on one square at a time as you transfer that reference photo onto your paper. Whichever way that you use to recreate your reference photo, it doesn't matter as long as you have an accurate sketch. Now, I briefly mentioned this earlier on, but it's very important to have colour swatches of all of your coloured pencil brands. This is because it will give you a good visual of what your colours will look like on paper, but it also makes it much easier to pick out colours from your sets when you want to do a drawing. To help you pick the right colours for your drawing, all you need to do is just lift up the colour swatches that you have created and hold it up to your reference photo. This will help you to very quickly identify colours that may be suitable for your drawing. And picking the right colours, again, is so essential for creating a realistic drawing. Also, as I said earlier on, you want to avoid picking colours based on what the colour of the pencil barrel is, because the barrel can be a very different colour to how the colours actually lay on paper. So always make sure that you are going by your colour swatches. It's also important to swatch your pencils on different coloured paper as well, because the way that your colours look on white paper might look very different to how they look on toned paper. When I was a beginner, I always used to draw using blunt pencils. Blunt pencils can create a lot of uneven shading and blending in your drawings, as well as very stubborn lines and scratchy effects. And this is because the blunt tip affects the way that the pencils make contact with the paper. They create a rough edge to your pencils that is unable to get into all of the grooves and crevices of the paper. They are also really hard for creating crisp, clear and fine details as well. Sharp pencils are really important for creating those really fine details in your drawings. And I've also found that using either a helical or an electrical sharpener is a game changer as well when it comes to sharpening your pencils. Keep sharpening your pencils throughout your drawing process. And also another tip I have to keep your pencils sharper for longer is to gently rotate your pencils as you are drawing, because when you rotate the tip of the pencils, it prevents one side of the pencil from becoming too blunt. Tip number 8 is focusing on layering and blending. And one thing that I wish I knew as a beginner is how important it is to work in layers. Layers create a lot of depth, tone and contrast in your drawings, which are essential for creating that realistic look and three-dimensional look in your drawings. Make sure that you build your layers up from light to dark and gradually build them up over time. Start with a gentle, soft pressure with your pencils as well, and slowly increase the pressure on your pencils. You don't want to be applying a heavy pressure with your pencils until the very end of the drawing, when you're happy with the amount of layers that you have built up. Another tip that I have for creating light layers with your pencils is to hold your pencil further back. And what this does is it loosens your grip on the pencils so that you aren't able to apply too much pressure with them. And when you want to apply more pressure, hold your pencil closer to the tip, because this gives you more control and pressure over your pencils. And you also want to make sure that when you shade or blend, you use circular motions. Circular motions are very important in your drawings because they will help you to prevent using stop and start lines in your drawings, and these lines can actually show through. You can also use several methods for blending coloured pencils. And this actually includes using your coloured pencils, a colourless blender or a solvent. There's also a few tools that you can use to take your layering skills to the next level. For example, by using an X-Acto knife. You can use an X-Acto knife to gently scratch away the layers of coloured pencils, and this helps to reveal some lighter tones underneath. Coloured pencils can also be very time consuming and a very slow medium to work in. Think about it, you are creating a drawing using a teeny tiny pencil tip, and so it's definitely going to take a long time to complete a drawing. One thing that I have learned as I've gained more experience with pencils is to be patient with them. Take your time with your drawing and avoid rushing, especially at the end of a drawing, because this is when you're most likely going to make mistakes. And the last and probably most important tip of all, tip number 10, and that is that practice makes progress. It takes time to build your skills when you're working with coloured pencils, and the more that you practice with them, the better you will become and the more that your drawings will improve. I see a lot of beginners giving up with coloured pencils because they get very disheartened at the lack of progress that they're making, and their progress is just not happening quick enough. But the reality is that you will get better with coloured pencils the more that you use them, and most importantly, as long as you don't give up. So those were the top 10 things that I wish I knew sooner as a beginner coloured pencil artist, and I really do hope that you found this video helpful today. If you did enjoy today's video, then please don't forget to like, hype and subscribe to my channel because it really does help me out, and I'd love to have you here with all of my amazing subscribers. I upload loads of new art videos here every single month, but until my next video, keep creating and I will see you soon. Bye everyone!